Listen, I wanted to, get on here and cook a beautiful steak for you today. So a lot of people ask me, Chef, how do you cook a steak? And I'm gonna be honest, there's so many different types of cuts, but just so y'all know, I just went to the grocery store and I picked up your regular old steak that's at the grocery store. And you know what? What I try to look for, especially in a cut like this, is marbling. Okay, if you look at this, this is actually a Snake River Farms Wagyu ribeye steak. Okay, now Snake River Farms, I think, is honestly a good quality beef. It's something that's becoming more readily available, and I highly suggest spend the extra money to get, especially if you're going to get a ribeye or a strip, spend a little bit extra money and upgrade to Prime. Okay, trust me, it's worth it. If you start with a good quality product, you will end up with a good quality product if you know how to cook it right. So again, take a look at this. I mean, it's beautiful. Great marbling. I had him pick this one out specifically, and if I turn it around, it just looks really good. And a lot of people ask me, like, hey, how do I cook a steak? And it's true. It's like, you don't want to spend all this money on a steak and then not cook it correctly. So there's two things that I recommend. And for the beginner cook, or if you haven't had the experience of cooking a lot of steaks, one of the things to do is just do the reverse sear. The reverse sear is, honestly, it's a foolproof way to just make sure you end up with a perfect product. Now, the reverse sear is basically where you have a meat thermometer in the steak and you set your oven at 250 degrees. It's a low temperature. It cooks the steak ever so gently and it dries it on the outside. Then from there, you sear it and bring it up to the temperature that you desire. Pro tip though, when it comes out of the oven at 120 or wherever you want to pull it, whatever temperature, 120, 25, make sure you let it come back down to room temperature, so 70 to 75 degrees, before you give it a hard sear. If you give it a hard sear, once it comes out of the oven, it's going to overcook. There's nothing you can do about it. But the reason why I want to say that for beginners is because it's a foolproof way to make sure that the steak is cooked properly, and you have a lot of wiggle room. Now, if in the kitchen, we would actually do it sous vide. This is, a technique that, you take it, you put it in a plastic bag and you cook it at a controlled, precise temperature for an extended period of time. I suggest that, like, a good example is me as a professional chef. I have cooked plenty of steaks, so I am not going to do the reverse sear. I'm just going to cook this because I know how to cook a piece of steak. But a lot of people don't, and they don't have the knowledge of actually cooking a steak. So I highly suggest to get a meat thermometer. But anyway, let's get right into it. Okay, so I think it's really important before you start, make sure that the steak is at room temperature. Okay, you want to let your steak sit out at room temperature. You don't want to start it ice cold. This will help with the cooking process. Now, you can season your steak with whatever you want. I personally am sick and tired of just salt or just salt and pepper. Like, honestly, I'd rather be a little bit more creative, but I had a lot of success with this Momofuku savory seasoned salt, which is actually, it's amazing. So this is what I'm going to use. You want to make sure you have your pan, your roasting rack, and then also you want to have a pair of tongs, and I have a cast iron preheating over here. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a little bit of safflower oil. Okay, and this is just to coat the meat with oil, right? Make sure that you have something that the spice can stick to. And I think it's really important to do this part. Then from there, we're going to hit this with the seasoned salt. All right. Make sure you get both sides. So I really like this seasoned salt. It has salt, spices, onion, yeast extract, garlic, pepper, tamari, salt. And, it has a really good umami flavor. But, again, like I said, you can season with whatever you want. A lot of chefs just use salt. Some people use salt and pepper. Okay, so I know this is kind of crazy, but see, me as a chef, I know that this temperature is rare. And the reason why, like, a lot of people get the mistake when you're, you know, for all the young cooks out there, listen, when a steak is just coming out of the oven and when it's super hot, the give is not there because it's very tense because it's being cooked. You have to let it rest for about 15 to 20 seconds. And then honestly, you will know as soon as you start to push it. But the way that I learned is to literally lift the steak up and feel it this way. So put both fingers and feel it this way, right? So I know that this steak is still rare, but the residual heat is gonna finish cooking this steak, and all we're gonna do is butter baste it. I'm gonna finish with a little bit of butter, and then we're gonna slice. But I think it's always important to, as a chef, to pan sear the meat, then in the oven, no butter yet, you know, for a few minutes, really hot oven, 400 to 450, then pull it out, let it rest to about rare, then butter baste it to mid-rare. And that's the pro tip. Okay, what I like to do is, with this beautiful cut of steak, this is the eye of the ribeye, and then this is the cap. I think what's really important is to separate these two, which I'm gonna do right now. So come in here, listen, there's a little piece of fat right here. What you wanna do is cut around that, okay? So this is what you do. Cut around that, okay? So then you have your ribeye cap that is enjoyed separately. Very important, cut this piece of fat off, okay? To the side, all right? Then I cut this other, but don't throw this away, this is good, okay? And then what you're gonna do is, if you look at how the meat is placed, I think what's really important is to understand the way meat works. So I'll show you this side, I just cut off a little bit of this side. But the way I'm gonna do this is I'm gonna cut against the grain, but at a bias. So that way, you know you're gonna get a tender steak. And I can already tell by the way this steak feels that it is a good cook. And like, you know, you gotta use the knife that's good for you. Look at this. Look at this cook. Beautiful, mid-rare, edge to edge. All right, I'm gonna get this on a plate. For the ribeye cap, I think what's really important, take in consideration, there's this fat right here. All right. I like to take this part off, okay? You don't want to get, but save it, because you could, you know, I'll eat it. Now, if you see the way the grain is going, what I like to do is just cut the cap straight down, okay? And then I'm gonna plate this up real quick. Beautiful cook. Okay. I don't know if you can tell because of the camera, but we'll get this on. Juicy. It is beautifully cooked, mid-rare, okay? And let me show you the back. And I think this is really important. So notice that, you know, the way this is cooked, I think is I prefer my ribeye mid-rare opposed, like I prefer my ribeye mid-rare, New York strip, pretty much on the rare side, and filet mid-rare. If you notice, as I was cutting the steak, there wasn't too much juice on the table. You have to let the steak rest. All right, so that steak was about a pound. Golden brown, delicious on each side. I wouldn't do more than 2 minutes or else you're cooking it too much. Then you wanna go into the oven for 3 to 4 minutes at 400 degrees, okay? Pull it out, let it rest, save the pan, Then, after the pan cools down a little bit, then you add your butter. Room temperature butter. Go in with the steak, baste, flip, baste, you know, for about 30 seconds on each side, and I'm telling you, it'll come out perfect for a pound steak. Make sure you smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm, and also hit that subscribe. You want to see more content like this? Psh, let's go.